For 7 years, I had carved out a small pocket of calm in a month-to-month sweat equity apartment in a rundown but not terrible building, a small turquoise and beige refuge in a city that swallows stability. I'm a 32-year-old man, living alone in a sane corner of New York in a one-bedroom from which I can reach work in a reasonable amount of time, the piece of which is a sanctuary. I leased at the bottom of the market and locked in a rate that the landlord, a woman in her late 70s, has barely raised. She managed her one building like a metronome, and she prized tenants who paid promptly, said nothing, and, if a leak sprung, repaired the damage themselves. I lived by that code. Never late, never loud, never anything but my own 2 feet. We were not pals, yet there was a silent regard between us. Or so I thought about my parents' chat gradual app RL. That fantasy by bribing my landlord to evict me for their golden daughter. A family divided my younger sister. Her husband and their son rode the current back to the city, their lives unraveling from his loss of work and their inability to find housing they could afford. I hardly gave it a second pass. Our connection was weak. She was the golden child. While growing up, which I adore of my parents, given everything while I struggled for recognition, she coasted through life unfazed. I grappled with relentless expectations. I had to, at a young age, learn how to stay away, find my identity apart from them, and maintain my own peace. You could even add a brief flashback of one of their childhood moments to illustrate the sister as the favorite, for example. A flashback to a moment of parental favoritism. This could inject some more feeling into their strained relationship. The first betrayal, first fissure showed weeks ago at a family dinner in my parents' dingy dining room. My mother's knife-sharp stare slides over to me. Your apartment would be so good for your sister's family. Or big boy, she went on, with the characteristic warmth that lights up her balanced efforts. You're hogging space, a singleton like you. The words stung, a warning wrapped in concern. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but the calls came curious, then insistent. Ever think about working closer to home? They asked. Ready for a change? I shut it tightly. My home was non-negotiable. The pressure surged. My father's chit-chat had hidden purpose. Family first. Your nephew needs stability. And she would then trot out the guilt. It's not fair for a child to grow up cramped when you have a place alone in comfort. I stood my ground. The lease my legal grounding, my 7 years of occupancy unblemished. They did not dispute the facts, only doubled down on the politics. The eviction a week later, a note tacked to my front door went through me like a bullet. This month's lease would not be renewed. 30 days to vacate. No warning, no explanation. I read the letter again and again, the despair turning to dread. I had been out of compliance, out of repayment, for 7 years. I tried the landlord, heart pounding, but her clipped, change in plans hung up the phone. My sanctuary was being ripped from my clutch. Note: landlord's reasons are unclear. Possibly includes something about why she's doing it. You can say she's desperate for money, young, and the baby's parents' best friend. So we can see. She's sleazy without making the mistake of kind of feeling sorry for her. The truth revealed fleeing to my parents' house. I stopped in the darkened hallway, their voices pouring out of the kitchen. My father's sardonic, triumphant laughter interjected. And the check cleared. The place will be hers in no time. Cool and conspiratorial, my mother lined up deliveries of furniture. She was hailing the landlord's smart play. Hello, she said on speakerphone, clearly surprised, though not unhappy. My mother's answer sliced through me. Anything for our girl. Your brother will do anything else. He always does. My heart was racing, black betrayal swirling down the dark chasm. I marched out, a storm of rage and determination brewing. In my chest, arming for justice, sleep fled that night. By the time daylight broke, I was no longer their obedient son. I assembled a binder with pages that became the canvas for my defense. A lease, payments, texts, a certified letter, video from a camera above my door, a sentinel against their machinations. If they wanted a war over my house, I would fight. It would testimony, law, and consequences. Confronting them, I demanded answers. My father's eyes dropped. My mother said, "Family compromises." I admitted I'd heard their call and their lies fell apart. My sister, with her face tight, whispered, "I didn't know they were paying her to kick you out." They called it a show of good faith, not a payoff, as if I'd only now realized I'd been wrong all along. I didn't tell them to get this far, she muttered. They shooed her aside. You need stability a lot more than he does. I left, my resolve ironclad. A legal stand my landlord made it appear that I didn't matter. Wouldn't answer my calls, texts, or emails. My lease contained a non-renew clause, but the P's and Q's were fairly obvious. The ethics zone was validated by a legal aid clinic that offers a fight how-to. My camera recorded my parents coming in with a landlord's key to tape off walls. Measure for my sister's furniture with a worn-out ruler. They thought my home was already theirs. I filed a police report for the illegal entry, changed the locks, and mailed a certified letter with the screenshots from video. Redundancy of the video 3 ways. In the letter, my dad accused me of breaking my nephew's heart. My apartment was home to my nephew. I blocked numbers, cut off digital connections, and clocked their burner attempts. My sister, her voice tremulous with dread, insisted she didn't know anything about the key. I believed her but had no interest in any of them. Building a case, my binder became my bunker. Lease, payments, texts, footage, and a timeline from that first dinner to the blocked calls. It felt like the classic unethical eviction. A tenants' rights group told me and directed me to file a complaint with the Housing Authority. I found a property upgrade donation from my parents to the landlord. Its date sandwiched within my growing repertoire. Dirty landlords so infuriated a journalist friend that she penned an article about their excesses, at which point I handed over my blackened proof to shame housing manipulation. It led to an outcry among neighbors, which unearthed 2 more tenants. Wrongful evictions, one for 10 years and another on an exclusive opportunity basis. Note: how the journalist gets involved feels a bit tacked on. There's something you may even be able to mention in passing a bit earlier, like a pal who was explained to you at the legal aid office. A smear campaign. The letter from the landlord accusing me of harassment was an empty one. I forwarded it to the tenants group. They said litigate. My parents kept calling, different numbers, begging about how hard it was on family. All of these I blocked and counted towards harassment charges. A flyer that had slipped under my door just after the construction to my left started announced that my apartment would be available soon. Drawrect 10.0, 3.0 inch, 10.0 inch, 0.1375 inch. You really have to admire their arrogance. I read it on behalf of the Housing Authority. The article took off, shared in mailboxes, passed around in groups. When my sister returned, the building manager agreed that the landlord had mentioned his family moving into a nicer unit months earlier. He provided an anonymous affidavit. A school staffer uncovered my parents' lie. They had told the school that my apartment was my sister's to fill out enrollment forms. Their announcement is private on my feed. And when my father turned to a website tool to allege his victimhood, lecturing about hackers and pleading for wads of cash and sympathy from his smug community page posts, winning the game. Silence costs more than rent. It eventually, beautifully, came back to bite him on the ass. Down to the links to the article and the screenshots of the whistleblower notices for those. Painful family need reimbursements. Family needs are work-related if you know how to word it. I sent it to the tax board, and an investigation was launched, escalating the fight. The landlord's intermediary floated a cash settlement. No apology. No nothing. Just hush money. We said no. We'd communicate through the courts. A subsequent article by a journalist, redacted affidavits, and a look at flimsy tenant protections led to a protest in front of the landlord's home. Signs were waved. Chants reverberated in news. Clips whizzed by. Her name was the epithet of tenant abuse. A leasing agent leaked a warning call about me, likely my father's voice on a burner phone, a portion of a smear campaign. Rental denial cited tenant history concerns. 3 landlords admitted they'd received calls about how I was a dangerous squatter. One voicemail, my dad's, calling me aggressive there, was the foundation of a defamation suit. A buddy of mine in cybersecurity discovered that the false tenant review site my parents had set up tied back to their own IP, claiming I was a lawsuit-loving nightmare, unconscious of her own mess. We added it to the defamation file, a folder full of subpoenaed records. Note: the surprise filing of the defamation suit. Foreshadow the card if you can before, for example, the leasing agent tip about rumblings of a wider campaign for smoother integration. Cutting ties. Relatives several ranks removed would guilt-trip me, claiming I was ripping the family apart. I forwarded their messages to my lawyer, and his threats put them out of business. My sister had solicited cease and desist letters to our parents and included me on them, not to make things right but to explain. The evidence was compelling, and the court sped up the civil trial. Video, emails, credit histories, and tenants who reported what I did. The landlord's representatives took potshots at my parents, but countermanded for every moving expense, every legal fee, and every income loss. A new home, my employer, seeing my resilience, promoted me, giving me a housing stipend and corporate apartments. A friend gave some serendipitous information, and that lucky info led us to a new home outside the city, at an address that no one could find. I got it done in 3 days, and my sanctuary survived. The civil case advanced. The landlord admitted to sending the payment, stood by it as a forward-thinking solution. The judge was no fan and deemed it unethical and reported it to the state. We won. Full damages. The legal fees. The landlord, my parents, had to pay for it. Defending my name, the defamation trial loomed. A coworker with enough morality to be disgusted by their deception testified to the fact that my parents had tried to destroy my rental history. They were most recently busted out trespassing by a pie measuring my old apt. We filed a trespassing case. The housing board suspended the landlord's license, and a pro bono attorney came on with us. My parents were not allowed to contact me, but they did, on the basis of a family photo delivery drop-off at the door. The court fined them and threatened to lock them up. A podcast blasted my story on a megaphone, and activists came running. The circle around my parents shrank. My father's contract expired, and they stared at bankruptcy and sold their home to the nonprofit. The final reckoning, the gavel fell, and the silence of the courtroom slammed into the room like a scream. The trial on defamation for blacklisting me gave me compensatory damages for the damage they caused me and punitive damages, a reflection of their smear campaign. Nowhere to hide by making our contest this low. Their lies, distributed through burner phones and fraudulent reviews, were criminal and legally cleared my name. There was a permanent injunction against them, so much as discussing me, punishable by jail time. My mother's courtroom apology, the too late one. I walked out with impenetrable fortress, a quiet legacy. My sister's family was forced into therapy by social services, her son marked by our parents' machinations. She left a note. I hope we can talk someday, but if not, I respect that. I donated a part of the damages anonymously to the tenants' organization. A documentary exposed my story anonymously to disrupt exploitation. I got hired by the city as a community liaison, and we won renter protections, and the city expanded them. Her landlord sold her building to a nonprofit that promised to be transparent. I wrote anonymous blog posts about tenants' rights, lingering in the shadows. Asterisk a year later, I had coffee with my sister, the hum of the cafe buffering our difficult dialogue. She'd report on her new hometown, her husband's decent job and therapy, unraveling her role as the golden child. I didn't sign up for that, but it was open. Justice wasn't revenge. The last sentence I wrote in my journal that night was, "Justice wasn't revenge." I was no longer looking over my shoulder. My war was a war of treason, my battlefield a light, my home a witness of its redemption. Asterisk note: the sisters' coffee date is short, but it's crucial. To add a specific gesture or memory, a physical gesture, the mention of some nervous habit reminding him of childhood would only heighten the emotional closure and the character's mixed emotions about it. Asterisk. The end.